And hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special edition of Ghosts of Bacon. I'm your host, Jake Roberts, and with us, riding shotgun, is my good friend John Edwards. I'm going to bring him into the podcast. Hey, John.
Hey, Jake, what's going on?
Thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate
Thanks,
your
man.
help.
Hey, where else would I be on Sunday? This is awesome.
Oh, I don't know. Doing something fun.
This is fun. Come on.
Okay. For us, yeah. This is
awesome.
Fun. This is how we entertain ourselves. So looking at all of the comments of people coming in, seeing a lot of great familiar names, Jan, William, Mary, good to see you. Our good friend Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie.
Tom Burns in the house, Jan Scorza. Listen, gang, thanks for joining us this evening. It's a little off-putting sometimes. We do these special events, but John and I were receiving a lot after last week's podcast. The response was actually pretty overwhelming. A lot of people had some really great questions that they put out to us. And so what John, suggested, hey, why don't we do a Q&A? Because, John, you and I, or you and Jeff aren't doing, your podcast this evening. Jeff's in the middle of a move. And,
Yep.
And so, we want to support him and give him a shout out tonight too. Thinking of him while he's, transitioning and all that sort of stuff. But you were spot on when you said, hey, listen, we should really do a Q&A and deal with some of these questions that are coming up and just meet them head on. Hey, Amy, thanks for joining us. Good to see you, my friend. So, we're looking at some of the questions that came up. And as usual, gang, the Ghosts of Bacon podcast has really attracted some intellects, I would say.
Absolutely.
I think that is an honest assessment, wouldn't you, John?
Absolutely.
And so the level of questions that you ask are just so good that we really wanted to spend a little bit of time tonight talking about that. And then after we address those, and if anyone else has anything else they want to pop into the chat, by all means, throw in your questions. Yeah, Jenny, that's for sure. Good, Jenny. Thanks. I appreciate it. Hey, Penn. Good to see you, sis. And so, when we do this, so if you have questions that come up as we go, but by all means, throw them in the chat, and John's going to be on top of it. And like I said, keep me on point because he's very good at doing that with me. The first thing I want to do, and then there's Jeff.
Hey, Jeff Freeman, welcome.
Good to see you, my friend. So, if time permits, we're going to jump into the part 2 of the Oak Island treasure map.
Oh, that would be great.
If time permits, and if everybody wants to hang with us, I'm willing to dive into it.
Jake, next week, I was going to say, we had so many good questions, high caliber questions, and you and I went through the chat, isolate some questions. I know you're going to say about next week. So, but I just want to say the level of questions were just so high caliber. And, when you and I chatted, we just have to tackle some of these, at this point, because, to do it justice in the ongoing conversation that we have with our viewers and when your viewers, it's such a high caliber conversation that how can you not?
Exactly. Yeah. Well said, John.
Hey, Gretchen Cornwall in the house.
Oh, hey, Gretchen. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. And speak of the devil. I mean, here we have, this caliber of people joining us. And, John, we didn't mean it literally. Come on, buddy. So one of the first questions I want to address was from an Oak Island researcher that everyone is now familiar with. We were talking on the phone earlier this week. My friend Bill Smith, the Peter Easton expert, and we were, gosh, we were on the phone for how long? We basically, John, you and I, we have epic phone conversations,
Yeah.
Bill and I had one of those where we just kind
Wow.
of kept going.
Bombshells, bombshells,
Yeah, yeah,
bombshells. Yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy.
back and forth.
Yep.
And so, his research, I mean, I don't even have to tell everyone who's watching this podcast or will watch this video later, how good he is at what he does. And he asked me an amazing question. He says, well, he says he doesn't doubt the validity of the ciphertext and those kind of things. He says, but I have to ask, if Bacon was actually heir to the throne, wouldn't he have been a threat to Queen Elizabeth? And therefore, wouldn't she have just eliminated him as a threat? And I said, what a great question. And I do get asked that question a lot. One of the things that we have to remember when we're addressing that type of question is we have to remember that, first of all, Mary Queen of Scots, on record throughout history, basically went to Queen Elizabeth for protection. Okay, when her throne was under threat in Scotland, she ran to Elizabeth, her cousin, and said, "I need your help." And Elizabeth helped her and protected her in England. So, that is an established relationship that, frankly, where they honored each other's heritage, okay, as family members. And so when I see that, and and John, you're really good at this, back engineering, or what do you
Yeah.
call it?
Back mapping, but the
Back
same thing.
map, same thing. Back mapping. Uh, this idea where if we go back in time, and all of a sudden, Mary Queen of Scots is in danger in France from Catherine de
Correct.
Medici, and she has to get out of Dodge with her baby, and she has to negotiate with the Queen of England,
Correct.
and Scotland and Ireland, permission to come home and say, listen, I need to regain my throne in Scotland. It's mine, but I need to get out of here, because, she was, in danger. Stephanie, awesome question. They were in contact with one another constantly, and they did work together behind the scenes to help each other with their agendas. So, and the big thing is that, Elizabeth was known to honor family. Okay, so when you consider Catherine de Medici was ruthless, and everyone knows it. I mean, throughout history, it's really on, it's really on record, historical record, that was a fact. So when we look at this tendency, and suddenly Mary says, "I need your help. I want to come back. I need to get out of here." And so, through Amias Paulette and another official whose name escapes me right now, she negotiates her return with Francis. And so, yes, Gretchen, I think that was a part of it. Also, Essex's execution really had its toll on her as well, because, frankly, he was her son. So, I think both of those events really took their toll on her. I'm 100% in agreement with you there, for sure. So when you consider all of these different aspects of the story, and then suddenly Elizabeth says, "Okay, here's what you do. You're not going to return to the islands with an heir to the throne." Because Mary was a threat to Elizabeth. And Elizabeth knew it, Mary knew it, so she had to negotiate her return. So what does Elizabeth do? She says, "Okay, so listen, I'm not heartless. I'm going to allow your son to live. I'm going to allow you to return, but you're not returning with an heir. And I'm taking that child and I'm putting it with my best friend and her husband, my Lord Keeper of the Seal." And so she places Francis with Sir Nicholas and Lady Anne Bacon. And they were staunch Protestants, and very anti-Mary. And so that was the household he grew up in. So Elizabeth Eh, she knew from the beginning that if he grew up in that household, he would never be a threat to her, but only an ally. And so, uh, that's my answer to Bill's question. And it's such a good question.
It's a
He's
great question.
such a smart guy.
But there had to be a trade-off, Jake. There had
there
to
had
be
to
a
be a trade-off.
trade-off. And
Yes.
it's a quid pro quo, in order for her to return, hey, you can't have any heir, any claim to either one of the thrones at this point.
Mm.
And, and we'll take care of you, but you have to keep your mouth shut,
Absolutely.
and that was the quid pro quo. And,
Well, that's just it. It's a win-win proposition for both of them, except
for both.
Mary had to give something up in order to get something. And then, of course, what she does is she positions herself in Scotland.
Correct.
And continues to maneuver to try to get the British throne, which Elizabeth knew she would do. But, like you said, and you and I talked about on the phone earlier, I mean, it was the Game of Thrones for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, hopefully and when Bill and I were talking on the phone, I didn't get into it that deeply, but hopefully that helps to answer his question. So what I'm going to do is throw in some of those questions, John, that you organized for me.
And Jake, we have some other questions already today, which I've been
all right. Cool. Let's deal with those first.
Okay, so let me go back a ways. Just some excellent questions, and I think Jan asked, I'm going to paraphrase there, what got you and both you and me in the codes and the discovering codes and looking at codes was one that Jan asked right off the bat.
Great question. Do you want to start?
Right here.
Go ahead.
I think this is it, right?
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay, Jan. Yeah, John, you want to start?
For me, Joseph Campbell, Comparative Religions, and then what I was doing is looking at just symbol, and a symbol has a connotation, a denotation, and then context. And so I really got into looking at commonalities, which is scientific method. Then the esoteric behind the symbol, and then so if the symbol means the same here, here, and here, and you're talking about 3 or 4 or 5 different time periods, and that's a big if. You have to back map, and you have to research, and you have to vet, and it's constant vetting. But then you're starting to make breakthroughs where you're saying, oh, this is part of the ascendant master theory, or this is an esoteric, which I see in 3 or 4 or 5 different places. But it means you have to study the secret societies. You have to study the Rosicrucian period. You have to study the Templar period. You have to study Egyptian mystery imports. You have to study there's so much, Jewish roots, imports, and the whole Kabbalic tradition, and there's so much of it. The Talmud, and going back to the ancient Jewish script, and and what was exchanged on the Silk Road. There's just so much to it. You kind of get all your information, and then you have to look at it and look for the commonalities. And when you start seeing the same things, I was like, wow, it's saying here and here, and it's talking about some, spirituality or theology or a concept of God. Then you have to ask yourself, what was the motivation? What was the context? What was the whys? And in the early formation of the church, Nicaea, Ephesus, Nicaea, Trent, it was dueling dogmas within the church itself. Whose dogma is going to win out, as the official dogma of the church. But then you have counter dogmas and other things. So there was all these forces, really political forces, military forces, about whose story, so to speak, or whose official dogma was going to win out. And that was not only in religion, but also in politics.
Right.
So you kind of get
back then, it was one and the same. Yeah.
It was one and the same. And for many, it was one and the same. And so for me, it's just looking at the finer details of what was so sacred, what was so important that you would code it. And then, about a year ago, I got into your work. I'm like, holy Moses, this is kind of the linchpin that I was missing. And then I suddenly see it all in code, and it matches everything I've studied my whole life. So I was like, but it was just like this, instantaneous. I mean, that's a short answer.
Well, it's so funny, John, because I mean, we kind of came at it, in the same way, because, I came at it through symbols as well. As an English teacher, I was big into teaching students how to unlock messages for themselves when it comes to, say, poetry and fiction. And so I started out teaching, the idea of universal symbolism, the idea that there are certain symbols that always mean the same thing when you encounter them. And in
Correct.
a very real way, it is a code. And once you know how to read it, it unlocks even more meaning for you. And so I was trying to give my students the eyes to see for themselves, as opposed to me saying, "This is what this means. Write it down in your notebooks." And instead, I would say, "What do you see? Here are the keys. How do you unlock it? What did you find?" Hey, Awoken One, thank you so much. Appreciate that. I just saw your comment. Thanks, John. So that led me to studying symbolism, Joseph Campbell, just like you, John. And getting into secret society symbolism, esotericism, and just looking at the images to see what they communicate. And so one of the things that happened was I had always had an interest in cryptanalysis and cryptology, ciphers and codes and such. And then, when I read Peter Amundsen's book, The Seven Steps to Mercy,
incredible.
Yeah, I was just like, I have to do this because I get it. I see what he did. I understand how he got there. And I'm pretty sure I can do this too, but maybe not as well as he can. And so I started doing it. I started looking at, some esoteric manuscripts and looking at them in terms of cryptanalysis. And I started to get results. And then, of course, I was always fascinated with Rosicrucian symbolism and Freemasonry. And so that led me to, studying those types of works. And then there were, all of you are familiar with Curse of Oak Island theorists, Chris Morford and Chris Dona. They were looking at what they called Shakespeare's plaque, the plaque on Shakespeare's funerary monument in Stratford upon Avon in Holy Trinity Church. They said, well, maybe you ought to look at it. You've been studying ciphers. And I took one look at it and I said, well, and I had seen it before years ago. And I looked at it, I said, well, you know what? I think that's a transposition cipher. Someday when I have time, I'm going to try to figure that thing out. And then they brought it up again. And I said, yeah. I said, I've always wanted to study this. And then, Peter Amundsen, with his analysis, with his Bacon pentagram, Chris Morford's Bacon triangle. I said, well, if it's Bacon, I mean, those ciphers are pretty well known. I can figure this out. And then that's how I got sucked into the vortex. So,
and what's unique about what you do and I do and William and Jason and Gretchen and Court and others, what's totally unique about it is we're coming at it in some cases the same modalities, in some cases different modalities, but the coders so wanted the message to go forward that if it's destroyed over here, it survives over here. Like the message is that important that we have to make sure the message survives. And so you start coding in different modalities and different mediums. And that's what makes it so unique, because when you and I overlap, or you overlap with other researchers, Jason, Gord, Gretchen, other people out there, William, there's something to it. And when you come at it independently, there's something to it.
And that this is why I'm so excited. For this show tonight and for the previous shows. For example, when you mentioned Jason and William and yourself, finding again redundancy of messages. We're all finding the same information. We're all identify, and this is the scientific method where you have reproducible results.
Correct.
And coming at it from independently researched, coming at it from a different angle, and all of a sudden, Jason Mercer messages me and says, "Oh, I just found the message about Mary Queen of Scots being, Francis's mother. Here it is." And I get William Russell, sending the messages, and we're all communicating and having redundancy of the message, which I think, again, that speaks to validity for sure. So, oh, thanks, Jan. Appreciate that. All right, so Yeah, you know, I had hoped we would get into the map tonight, but we still have a lot of questions.
They were great questions, though. They were
Such
fantastic.
great questions. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna take this first one from Zandlo, our good friend, uh, great friend of the show. I'm gonna post it here in the chat so everyone can see it.
Okay.
Put
And
it up.
then I'll get it up there.
There we go.
Okay. And
So,
here's
yeah, he's asking, do you believe the system for aliases also works for authorship of other books and writings by Bacon? 100% yes, Zantlo. And not only that, it works for books that were in plays that were authored by Sir Walter Raleigh and Anthony Bacon
yes.
as well. It works for all three of them, and possibly others that I haven't even discovered yet, because you have to understand that this whole formula is not just, it's not newly discovered. Others know all about this. I was able to crack it and parse it out. And now that it's out there, I think other people are going to be able to apply it. I highly recommend that someone does it for the author of Don Quixote of Cervantes. And I think that you will be pleasantly surprised to recognize that Don Quixote was actually written by Sir Walter Raleigh. And you know, there are other people out there that again, it's the information is just oh, let's put Jenny's up there.
Okay.
There you go.
Cool.
Yeah. We have found, Jenny, oodles of information in the King James Bible. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and I can't wait to have William Russell back on the show, because he and I did a Zoom yesterday, and Williams, I know you're watching. I couldn't tell you enough how much you blew my mind, and I know it's so just the tip of the iceberg of what you found. I shared some of it with John, but it's like, wow, guys, yeah, Jenny, it's so good.
Now, what's interesting with the
stuff that John's found, it's like, John, I'm going to combine the next two questions into one, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, while you're posting those, you know, if you go back and look, there were about 47 scholars, give or take, that were working on the 1611, started in 1604, I believe, the King James Bible. Right. And so my question, are those 47 scholars in the know or not? And, you know, it'd be interesting to see who exactly. I'm currently researching that to try to see if I can get the exact, you know, at least some of the lead scholars. And were they also, like, maybe not the inner circle of the Rose Cross, but were they in some periphery? You know, do they know about at least the coding aspect of it? If not, then Bacon goes back and edits the 1611 and adds all the coding in, which could very well have happened as well. So it's one of the two, or maybe a combination thereof.
I would suspect, and this is just based upon my observations of the text itself, is that Bacon went through and made sure that all of those codes were highlighted and put in there.
Wow.
When I see the number 47, for me, it's a red flag.
Yep.
I highly doubt that there were actually 47 scholars who did it. 47 is the value of Mary in reverse cipher. And so when I see these numbers now in relation to Francis Bacon or James the First, I am, yes, thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Right on the money and right on the bot. I immediately see those numbers. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you did there.
It's interesting that it becomes the official, you know, number of scholars. Purposely, he's recording his own history.
Yes, you know, and 100%. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, John. Jason,
Jason. I'll go back to Jason.
Yeah.
47 scholars, Mary. Let's go back to this question here.
All right, so Theodosia had asked the question about, what about John Dee? You know, what are my thoughts on John Dee? He says, are you aware of the alchemical and occult practices of Sir Francis Bacon in relation to the character known as, quote, John Dee? And I love the way you asked that question in terms of the character known as John Dee, because Um, the more I read about it, John Dee is a hot button issue, and so I've left it alone. Kind of like a lot of the information that I've found that I haven't announced to the public yet. Along with the Champlain map,
Mm-hmm.
for example. I haven't really talked about this publicly because it makes me sound like I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, if you will. So I haven't really touched John Dee much. And I am aware of the alchemical and occult practices of Sir Francis Bacon. And I am aware of the tradition that states that he was taught by John Dee. And so, but I'm also aware of the fact that in the play As You Like It, they state all the world's a stage and we are all the men and women merely players. And one of the meanings of that is we have to remember that Francis Bacon, the people around him, they were spies. They were going out into the world. Picture, your favorite spy movie where all of a sudden, Jason Bourne opens his briefcase and there's 10 passports in that briefcase, right? Each with a different alias or different identity, and he can become that person in any country he wants to become that person. That's exactly what these guys were doing. Okay. So when I look at John Dee, he has all of the characteristics of a masker cut out. I'm not going to go, I don't have the corroborating evidence to support the idea that, yes, Gretchen, 007. I don't have the corroborating evidence to support that he was, a mask of one of the RC, or if he was even a member of the RC. His fingerprints are not as prolific as Bacon, Raleigh, Anthony, and a couple of others. So as far as John Dee goes, I've been putting it off. I've been putting off digging into him. His Manus Hieroglyphica, is pretty indicative of the Rosy Cross work. And that's about all I can really. I'm not going to go out on a limb and go into that. And tell your cat I said sorry, Jan. and Gretchen, the 007 is really cool. John and I talked about this, I think, in an earlier show, I think earlier in the year, where the 007 is really cool. The 00 are the eyes, and the 7 is actually the letter Daleth, D, in Hebrew. So it's pretty cool that he used that as a symbol.
Now here's a great question here, Jake. I'm going to throw it up there. And I would say yes, because character count, word choice, coded words, all went into the King James Bible. I mean, a lot of it, you have to choose certain words that have certain characters and character counts and character values to bounce it off, simple, reverse, K cipher, whatever the cipher was. So these words were translated in a very precise way to create certain values. I mean, would you agree with that?
100%. And in fact, I got into this an in-depth conversation about this with one of my closest friends. He's a local pastor, and he says, "Well, wait a minute," and he says, he kind of poo-poos the King James Bible, because of that. Actually, that it's he doesn't agree with a lot of the translations. But Jenny, it's such a great question. And when you look at the King James Bible and you look at the symbols that designate a footnote in the margins, okay, one of them is a cross that John knows. I've discussed at length with you and William and Jason. The cross is actually a plus sign that indicates what to do with the words around it. But here's the caveat: the words that are in the text, yes, it's his interpretation in order to make the cipher work. The explanatory notes, however, do conform to the original meaning of the original Hebrew and Greek text. So
correct.
He tried to maintain the integrity of the information while incorporating his cipher systems.
It's genius.
So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, he was definitely Jesus. Yeah. So, Stephanie, great comment. Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up. So everyone can see the question on the screen. Stephanie McPeak-Peterson, an amazing researcher. If you haven't checked out her YouTube channel, it's you need to check it out. Stephanie, you're doing some amazing work out there, which is why this question is so great. Now, here's the thing about Denmark. Rosencrantz, is a name that's famous from Hamlet, the tragedy of Prince Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. Obviously, a play that I'm extremely very familiar with. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, of course, were Hamlet's best friends. Now, Rosencrantz family of Denmark was, again, very suddenly appears in history. And Stephanie, I love that you're bringing this up because one of the RC's bases of operation was Denmark. Okay. When King James, Bacon's younger half brother, decided to make peace with Spain and say that all privateers, he revoked their licenses to be privateers. According to my friend Bill Smith, a lot of them decided, okay, we're going to start working and operating out of Denmark now. And that's exactly what Bacon and Sir Walter Raleigh did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were known, I believe, and this is my premise and hypothesis, due to a lot of the evidence that I've uncovered lately. They were operating under the epithet of the Lions of the Sea. And so that connection with Rosencrantz and Rosencreutz, I agree. There's a connection there. Good thoughts. Thank you so much. Jason, Bacon has created spellings that I have found. Many will total 100 in simple and reverse cipher. Sonnets, the word sonnets was created by Bacon. Yeah, 100%. Yes, it was SONETTS before. That's absolutely true. And Jason, you're the one that's kind of been on the vanguard of that info in terms of the way he really did create our language. So yeah, great observation. Thanks for that. Oh, thanks, Jenny. Yeah, everyone should at least watch Stephanie's interview with me on her channel. You're definitely going to want to watch her other videos as well. I think that if you are watching this podcast right now, this evening live, chances are you're familiar with a lot of the information I talked about with Stephanie in her interview. But Stephanie's a great interviewer, and it was really nice to kind of I had her on this show, and then to kind of reverse roles where she's asking me questions about. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was a great interview, and Stephanie, you do an awesome job. So. Thanks for that.
So do we have any more questions, Jake?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let me grab some more and throw some out. Cool. The last one was about John D. And like I said, here's one from one of our viewers this evening who always asks great questions. Oh, you're welcome, Stephanie. And this is one from Jenny. So she was wondering if part of the Rosy Cross and Masons were able to support one another in their endeavors, and that their occupations were thinking they might have forged documents, etc. And so the answer is yes, 100%. Sure. That's the short answer, Jenny, because one of the ciphertexts that I did not include in the Holy Trinity Decryption that's in my book, The Ghosts of Bacon, that's coming out this summer, is that Bacon states that his Fama fraternity evolved into Freemasonry. So basically what we have there is a message, a ciphertext that explicitly states that Bacon was responsible for the creation, well, not just himself, but his fraternity was responsible for the creation of speculative Freemasonry, which I think is huge. I left it out of the first book simply because I didn't have the corroborating evidence to support it. I now do. And
Hmm.
so even though it's like, you go back to cipher work with William and Elizabeth Friedman, and they state that, they call ciphers and their messages as solid, the solid groundwork, right? I know and I recognize that modern audiences tend to look at cipher evidence with a little bit more hesitation, and that they need to see other corroborating
Hmm.
ideas, facts in order to support it. So,
Here's a,
yeah, great question. Great question.
here's a great question from our friend
Hey,
Judy
there's our friend
Radich.
Judy. Yeah.
Yep.
How many years did it take Bacon to code Psalms, and which years was this? Well, great question, Judy. In my opinion, now, so and I'm not going to uh, do a spoiler for anyone else's work, but William Russell was able to demonstrate to me uh, via the King James Bible that Bacon had planned his his supposed philosophical death for over 15 years.
Hmm.
Okay, he demonstrated that in my last podcast with him, um, and so that means that a lot of the plans that appear in the King James Bible could have been in the works for years. Okay, his planned philosophical death. I mean, he had planned it for 15 years in advance, and then he encoded it in the Bible. Okay, so William was very able to effectively demonstrate that. So that means that all of the cipher evidence that John and I and William and Jason and others have found in the Psalms. Uh, when did he encode them? When did he plan it? How many years did it take? There's no way of answering that question, I don't think. Um, we do know that he had the original manuscript in his possession for just over a year
Mm-hmm.
while he revised and edited. Now,
Correct.
is that to say that? And this was John. Was it between 1609 and 1610 that he had it, and then they published in 1611?
Correct.
Or
That's correct.
yeah, okay.
That's correct.
So
With
he
it
had it.
being, yeah, it
Yeah,
being authorized in June 30th, 1604, with the scholars getting together and doing the legwork for Bacon before he actually edited it.
correct. Okay, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So to best answer your question, Judy, um, unfortunately, it's not answerable in my opinion, simply because those would be the years of operation of when he was doing it,
Correct.
leading up to it, knowing that he was going to be the one and it was going to be in his hands. He had to have known, in 1604 when the group was put together in the first place. Uh, so that means that he had that amount of time to put and plan out all of those ciphers.
And he could have very easily planned out the ciphers in Psalms prior to hitting the edits, knowing exactly what values he was going to use. So the edits to do Psalms might not have taken that long because he
Yes.
had done all the work between, like you said, he was doing this for 50. I'm sure he worked on it off and on.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
and he knew exactly the coding. He knew how he's going to do the coding.
Yep.
He knew the words he was going to use, all choice words, and he literally probably went through and substituted words that would make the ciphers work. Just
Absolutely. And he
simple as
also
tools.
planned out how he was going to place them on the page
Correct.
in terms of their position. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Great question, Judy. But
Awesome.
that's the best answer we can give you at this point. The other thing too is and that question kind of brings up the question I get a lot, and another one that
Jason.
oh, Jason, come on. You're so right. You're so right. And so the thing is that put Judy's question up.
Sure, got it.
It's a good one. Yeah. Now, here's the thing, Judy. Did he have to be in order to do the work? The answer is no. He could have been on a ship at sea, and he would be having to take a couple of positional readings, check it out on the map, give the orders of where to steer and what direction to take, and then he goes back in his cabin and continues working and writing. Um,
Hmm.
this is how he did all of this work, and it brings up one of the most commonly asked questions I get, and I brought it up in the last broadcast, which is how did he do it all? It's as if he did the work of my former student Chris Chambers was watching last week, and he said how writing Shakespeare is a monumental work. It seems like it would have taken lifetimes. Well, the problem is that all of those plays were written in a very short period of time, historically speaking, and it was far less than one lifetime. And you have to recognize that these guys with all of these passports, if we will, think of it that way, they were being these people constantly, all the time, simultaneously. And so he wouldn't need to have been in England at the time. But I mean, according to the ciphertext, he was leading up to the publication of the 1611. There were times when he was actually in New France in Montreal. There were times when he was in Paris, and so he was traveling around. But you have to remember that there's a lot of time to kill on a transatlantic voyage in a sailing ship. So, great question. Yeah, Judy, that's absolutely true. There's no way of knowing and documenting. If someone is traveling under an assumed name and an alias, there's no way to document where they were at any given time. And that's the hard part of all of this. This is why I can only go back and rely upon the ciphertext that I've decrypted that state where he was and when, because historical records don't tell the story. So you're absolutely right. In truth, we don't know. Great observation, as usual. Good thoughts. Good gang. And Jenny, yeah, I agree. It really does make us wonder, doesn't it? And I'm thinking of other navigators like Peter Easton. What did he do?
So we have another question, right, Jake?
Yeah.
From our pool questions.
Yeah, let me. Another one from Theodosia.
Okay.
And copying this in. Yeah, Tom. And that's really, at the heart of this is that observation and how staggering that is to us as moderns. When we take away all of our daily distractions, our weekly distractions, and the fact that we all have to punch a time clock, something that Bacon never had to do in his entire life. You take away those kinds of restrictions and living the life of a nobleman, which we don't see people doing that in this day and age, especially here in the States or in Canada. So there's that. Let's see. Some drafts of the RC came from prior to his birth. If John Dee didn't pass along sacred geometry and other stuff, where did Bacon learn these things? In Egypt or the Mediterranean locales? That's a possibility, Zantlo. And again, great question. The problem is that what I've discovered in the last year when it comes to a lot of these documents of the RC, the dates aren't dates at all. In fact, they're signatures. For example, let's see, maybe I should drop a bomb right now. Maybe now it's not the time. But I can say one particular artist specifically who is extremely famous was actually an alias of none other than Sir Walter Raleigh. He was a master artist, and his work is predated into the early 1500s, and the dates are not dates at all. But when you take the first two numbers and add them the second two numbers, it provides the signature of Walter Raleigh. So you've got Rosencrantz in New York in 1728, whose descendants married Hilt's family. No kidding, Amy. That's really impressive. Yeah, Gretchen, it really was. It was already there. Very true.
Okay, let's go with our next question.
So, yep, Newton had a chest, in fact, several full of alchemical writings. Instead of being deciphered and given to the public, these were scuttled away and represented an extremely large body of work. That does not surprise me at all. I've read uh, some general statements about Newton and his alchemical work, and the fact that he was plugged in to that whole line of thought, and the idea that all of his works would have been disappeared really does not surprise anyone. I think anyone who's involved in this kind of research or involved in this kind of discussion. When you consider how many things get secreted away into the Vatican archives or the Smithsonian Institute. I don't have to tell any of you about that. I'm sure that all of you know that for a fact. So yeah, again, another interesting thought from Theodosia. So looking at and once again, here's another question. Yeah, Gretchen, for sure. That line of thought. You and I have talked about this before. It's definitely there.
Yep.
That history of a lineage of thoughts. So as I'm copying and pasting all of these messages, for whatever reason, my chat is adding in extras that I had been privately messaging here. I have no idea why the TY ended up there, but wonder if Bacon being denied his birthright made him realize that a monarchy wasn't necessary, and so he had to set out to create a government based on the people instead of royalty.
Wow.
And as usual, Jenny, you're on my brainwave. That was one of the premises that I included in my first book, was this idea of, he made me wonder that, if he was going to be denied his birthright and then he just kind of gave it up, which is what he says. He says, I pass on holiday. He was the heir to 2 thrones, and he says, I'm out. The fact that, he, in a very real way, he was denied his birthright. I think we can all agree on that at this point. If anyone who actually looks at the ciphertext and looks at the messages, it's very easy to see that's what happened, and that his parentage was none other than Mary Queen of Scots and Francis II. So when we consider that, one of the premises that I came up with, I couldn't help but wonder if he couldn't be king, then maybe there should be no kings. There's that element to it where, well, wait a minute, if this can happen to me and this is my birthright, well, how does this make this whole system legitimate? It really undermines the legitimacy of the divine right of kings, because here he was, the son of a king and a queen, and heir to 2 different thrones. So if all of a sudden that can be taken away from him, what does that say about the divine right of kings? It totally legitimizes the whole system. And so, someone as smart as him and as logical as him, he'd be thinking, well, this whole system is screwed up. Maybe I should come up with something better. And if it truly is responsible for the creation of speculative Freemasonry, encoded and embedded within that system of thought is this idea of self-governance, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And their whole constitution, all of a sudden, it's very, sounds all very similar to a lot of the ideas that we all hold true.
You see it in Anderson's 1723 Constitution of Freemasonry, yes, which later goes on to impact our very own Constitution here in the U.S. Those values that are outlined in that Constitution are also incorporated by the founding fathers who were Masons into our own Constitution. And the kicker is, The Anderson's Constitution in 1723 also contains the same signature ciphers as
Yeah,
we've seen before. I am doing
sure.
research on that aspect of same signature ciphers.
They're all there.
100 years from the publication of the first folio in 1623.
Yeah.
Again, that 100, Francis Bacon, the constant repetition of these signature ciphers. Now,
Yep.
why would they be in Anderson's Constitution of 1723?
The whole idea was to, bequeath this
Correct.
new fraternity, this knowledge in this system, and they can continue to use that system without even realizing
Correct.
possibly what the message truly was. But all of a sudden he is assured that that message continues and gets spread. And so I put up Judy's question: why would
Okay.
Bacon just step aside so easily for his stepbrother? And Judy, once again, it's a question I get all the time, and it's such a good one. First of all, it was his half brother, not his stepbrother. His stepbrother probably would have been Anthony if we're going to use those terms. But first of all, we have to remember that Sir Francis Bacon stated that all I have to go with are the ciphertexts, and it states explicitly that he loves seeing his brother on the throne, and it also says that he wanted to pass on holiday. And then he famously stated that all knowledge was his domain. And so he wanted to be the king of knowledge, not necessarily England. And so the idea that he and James had this secret brotherly relationship is in those ciphertexts, that I've published. And so the idea of him stepping aside and then all of a sudden helping him ascend to the throne in the succession after Elizabeth makes perfect sense. And it wasn't until James was on the throne that all of a sudden, Bacon's political career took off in terms of being knighted, becoming Keeper of the Seal, all of those kinds of things that happened under James. So that, to answer your question, I mean, that's the answer. He loved seeing him there, and he didn't want it. He wanted to go out and study the world. He wanted to study science. He wanted to create, I think, he wanted to impact how the world continued to develop in terms of secular knowledge as well as in terms of religious knowledge, and he had that effect. Yeah, Gretchen. That's very true. When all of a sudden you have someone like Sir Francis Bacon who has all of that merit, right? Look at all of his accomplishments. Look at you look in history, and people describe him as, even in the face of his enemies, he never showed them malice. He never showed them disdain. He showed them respect. And so the idea of there it is. There's the answer. Thank you, Zanlo. So yeah, I mean, that's what he was doing, and it totally makes sense. Well, you're very welcome, Gretchen. Oh, Stephanie. I wonder if Bacon said anything regarding knowledge having an international jurisdiction just because of his law background and his focus on domain. There's evidence to support that, because, come to find out, it looks as if that inner core of the RC Brotherhood, they were creating what was called the Republic of Letters. Okay, this republic, crossed international boundaries, where you had all of these Renaissance thinkers sharing information freely, and helping each other with their research, scientific exploration, and engineering, and you name it. The arts, basically the 7 liberal arts and sciences. And so this was really, I think, his great work. So Yeah, Stephanie, I think that there's a lot of evidence to support that.
Wow, great question.
Well, yeah, I know. It's like
William.
William.
So
Well, the worst part is, I mean, it's funny that the four of us here. William, you're awesome. Oh, wow, that's cool, Stephanie. Very cool. All right. Have another question coming up here from Carolyn. I'm going to throw it in here.
All right.
So Carolyn asks, did Bacon and company have assistants who can act as doubles temporarily? I'm going to just definitively say yes, 100%. And here's why. There's a very famous example, a record of a marquis from France who was a part of an entourage. And I think they were trying to negotiate a wedding between, maybe it was Charles, James's son, and the princess in France. They exactly, Tom. Tom already has the answer. I've talked about this before, where all of a sudden he arrives and he wants to have an audience with Francis Bacon, and and what he did was he met with him, and he was frequently, ill and would be behind a curtain in his bed because of his health, and he wanted to protect himself and people visiting him. And so, and again, Tom, right on the button, the man behind the curtain. This is what he would do is he would meet with people and they would never see his face. And then this marquis famously said that Bacon was like the angels, that everyone always hears about them, but no one ever sees them. And yes, Amy, 100%. He had a lot of loyal servants, and they all did, who were constantly covering for them. One of the things that we're going to be getting into is how it's possible that, say, Sir Walter Raleigh, the entire time he was locked up in the Tower of London, how he was actually out and operating, being an agent for James I. And so these guys, you have to remember that they truly treated the whole world as their stage, and they would assume the roles that they wanted to play, given the situation. And so that's what happened with Bacon. He did have a double, 100%. I can say that explicitly. Yes, he had a double, and so did Sir Walter Raleigh. And it's possible Anthony did as well. I'm not sure, but they were the core of the Rosy Cross, the three of them. And so that's probably the best answer I can give for that, Carolyn. It's such a great question. Wow. People always ask, well, how could, Bacon be in two places at once? Well, that's how. That's how. So true. Mostly harmless, right, Stephanie? That's what we are. Douglas Adams, huge fan. Tom, that's just it. The funny thing is that they actually did have passports back then. This is something that I had never known. I mean, guys, you have to remember that when I originally started doing this research, I was a newbie. I had no idea what I was even doing at first. And I was very ignorant of the actual history of, I knew who Sir Francis Bacon was. I knew his role in history, or I thought I did. Oh my God, that's so good. If you're not a Douglas Adams fan, I don't know if you have any business watching this right now, but the Dolphin, so long, and thanks for all the fish. It's one of my favorite books. But yeah, Tom is saying, no photo IDs or passports, but they actually did have passports. This astonished me. And then I thought, well, this is easy though, because the passports were actually issued in England, if I remember this correctly, by the people in the Privy Council, and one of the main members was Francis Walsingham, who was the master of spies. It'd be really easy for him to just kind of write up a bunch of passports and say, "Here you go, Francis.
And here's the official seal." Boom.
Yep.
You know, and someone says, "Papers, please," and here they are.
And there you go. And they would also have letters of introduction in all of the courts of Europe. They would have, where, Sir Walter Raleigh shows up and he says, "Hi, my name's Nicholas Hilliard, and I'm here to paint your miniature portrait." And and there you go.
I love this question.
Well, that's a mystery, Jenny. I don't have an answer for the number 42, unfortunately. But yeah, that was the answer to the life, the universe, and everything, wasn't it? Do you really, Stephanie? Oh my gosh.
What?
Yeah, Amy, that's exactly right. The people that were, behind their work, Francis Walsingham in particular, they're the ones, issuing the papers, and they're actually, Anthony Bacon in his work as an intelligencer. He was reporting back directly to Robert Devereux, second Earl of Essex, and Francis Walsingham. Yeah, so 100%. There you go. Could you see that? It's like these guys walking into the office and say, "Hey, Walsingham, whack this paper with a seal, will you?"
Oh, look at this.
Oh, geez. I mean, your work, Stephanie, is just mind-boggling. It's so cool. So cool. And Jason, that was the premise in my first book when I was talking about all of these painters as aliases. They go into a court, and here they are, a royal painter, and you have all these people sitting around having a conversation while the king is getting his portrait painted, or the queen regent is getting her portrait painted, and you have the artist just sitting there, going away on the canvas, taking in every single word. And I think that was a big part of what they did. Amy. Yeah, I think it would be a lot like that. It's like, oh, no, he gets a pass. It's okay. He was homesick. Fine. I'll write a note. Oh, wow. Great questions, gang. Wow, we're just over an hour at this point. Hour and 5 minutes.
Janet.
Yeah, Chad. I'm not dead yet. Yeah. I got better. For sure. So any more questions? Yeah, we're at an hour 5 now, gang. Yep. So I don't think we're going to dive into the map, because that's going to take us a good hour. And we're celebrating my wife's birthday next weekend. And so Ghosts of Bacon will be postponed until another week. And
which will be part 2.
Which will be the real part 2. I'll call it part 3 because I'm calling this part 2. Such great questions. Well, the funny thing is this is one of the reasons why I love this group so much, and the groups that we're involved in, John, because we can make Douglas Adams and Monty Python jokes, and everyone watching gets it. I don't know what that really says about all of us, but gang, but I like it. I love it.
Part 3.
Thanks, Ben. Part 3, here it comes. Just but a scratch. Yeah. Yeah. If we start trading Monty Python lines, we'll be here all night. So. I can pretty much quote most of those movies, unfortunately. So, all right, what anything else for the good of the order, gang? Because going into the next. Oh, I know what I was going to do, John. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
We had questions about the at-bash substitution.
Yes.
Remember?
Yes, we did. Yes.
I really want to show that. So here, hold on. All right, everyone. Before I cut you loose, I'm just going to share my screen quickly, and we're going to take a look at, if you go to my website and you go to the resource page, looks like this. The Champlain map is here, the very first thing you click on, and it's a high resolution image that you can zoom in on and check out all the features I'm going to be talking about on the next show. The cipher resources, and this is, I've been doing a lot of back to basics, and John, I want to thank you for recommending that I do that. It's been really helpful, I think, to a lot of the viewers.
No problem.
And yeah, for sure. And one of the things that I did was I put all of these documents here on my website, and people can click on them. And if you click on the @bash, this is the substitution system that Bacon used. I call it, it's referred to as an @bash substitution system because the original @bash substitution, gang, was with the Hebrew alphabet. And what they did was they had the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet divided in half and doubled on itself. So it would go, in our case, in the Elizabethan alphabet, what Bacon did was he went through A through M, and then N through Z doubles back on itself. And each of these letters can be substituted for one another using anagrams, in anagrams, okay? So a G can be an S, an F can be a T. And so in this way, it gave them a great deal of flexibility in creating anagrams. And on Champlain's map, I showed this example last week, but here you can see it kind of demonstrated and explained much easier using this substitution system. And again, @bash refers to the Hebrew alphabet, but I just apply it to this because it's been in use for a very long time and is used like that in other substitution systems as well that do the same thing. And so here you can see that this G in Gross Chabos becomes an S here. All right. These letters drop directly down. The A's over here. The S over here, down here. And here we have a substitution of H for R. And here you can see where each of those takes place. H, R,
Gotcha.
C, X, and so on. And hopefully that, and G, S. So that's when I refer to that substitution system. You can also think of it this way. All right. And let me.
So you're doing both, Jake? You're using the system to translate the letters with their corresponding letter, and it's an anagram at the same time.
100%. It's an anagram that works because you're able to substitute between these different letters. Okay. In this case, Gross Chabos, when you rearrange them and then you substitute, R for the H and S for this G, it becomes Rosy Cross. And Y for the B. There, you can see.
So when you do it, do you do the translation first and then solve the anagram, or do you solve the anagram first? Or in your mind,
in my mind, it just kind of happens all at once because I have been doing it for so long. When I first did it, I had to do it this way. Think of it this way, gang. If we look at simple cipher and reverse cipher, let's take a look at B can be a Y and Y can be a B. Here's why. B in simple cipher is 2 and B in reverse cipher is 23. Y in simple cipher is 23 and in reverse it's 2. So they share those same values. Does that make sense? And so in that way, what Bacon did was he was basically saying, okay, well, since they share those same values, I can use them in substitution for one another in this type of situation. Gotcha. If there's a context, okay, here's the thing. You don't just willy-nilly do this. You can't just say, well, I'm going to substitute this letter for that letter. No, these are the substitutions that he used, period. And if there's a context for a possible, anagram, then suddenly you can say, oh, well, okay, so Gros Chavos, I wonder what that is. Then I'm like, oh, well, you can substitute. We need another S. Well, there's a G there. That's an S in the substitution system. Do you see what I mean, John? So
it's like sliding a value down and sliding a value up. It's like having tiles, and you're just physically just sliding them over.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, actually, because if you have the context and you know that Bacon or Anthony or Raleigh was responsible for creating an image, for example, and you see a word and it's misspelled, and Gretchen,
thanks Gretchen,
thanks for showing up. I appreciate you very much.
Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, appreciate your time. And so when we look at the context and it's there, and you see those misspellings and you recognize, oh, that's a clue. So let's take a look at possible substitutions. And anyone who wants to try this out, what you can do is you just use that @bash page I just showed you, and you take the words that you want to see if there's an anagram, and what you do is you put its substitution above it, and then you look at that combination of letters and see what it spells. So @bash is like combining simple and reverse for more flexibility in coding. That's exactly what he did, Jenny. Yes, you get it.
That's it.
That's it. 100%. It complicates things as a cryptanalyst. Good night, Gretchen. Thanks for joining us. I know you're staying up late for this tonight over there across the pond. So yeah, Jenny, that's how he did it. And he recognized that this would give him greater flexibility in the encryption, and that anyone who knows that rule, when they see it, in particular, on Champlain's map, is the misspelling of the French word for cod, which is morue. He spells it with an L as modu. And yeah, John or Tom. Yeah. Esoteric Scrabble. That's exactly what it is, man. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, if you anyone who wants to give it a try, if you have a hold of any of those images, frontispieces in particular, could possibly contain some of those messages, and you want to play around with it, that's a little trick used for sure. Yeah. Well, John, I want to thank you, my friend, as usual. Hour and 15 minutes already, passed very quickly. So many amazing questions. This is one of the things that, I love about doing this is, thank you, Dave. Thanks for showing up. So many cool people, so many great minds, so many great questions. Awesome. And just sharing this information with all of you, it's really an honor and a privilege, as far as I'm concerned. And sorry about not getting to the map tonight, gang, but that's to be continued. Part 3, Penny, as she had pointed out. So listen, gang, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for this evening. I want to thank you all for supporting us as usual. John, I want to thank you for riding shotgun. You always do such a great job with me. I appreciate you very much. Appreciate our friendship. And Stephanie, it really is fun to hang out, isn't it? Thanks, Sharon. Great comment. So listen, stay safe, gang. Take care of each other. Be kind. And thanks, Tom. Yeah, that's the idea. Is the whole purpose is to make sense of this, share it with people, so that the more we see it, the more. Here's the thing: once you do see it, you can't unsee it.
Unsee it.
It's just there. Hey, Kurtwood, your video, by the way, bud, blew my mind. I'm gonna get you on, and we're gonna share that at some point. And I'm gonna, if it's all right with you, I want to pass it on to John and show him what you did, because that was just so cool. So many cool people, so many smart people, doing great
Awesome.
stuff. Jason, you're awesome. You and William, all you guys. Amy, thank you for your support, and you're always uh, such a great questioner, great researcher who feeds us some pretty cool information. Um,
I take it that's a yes.
I think that's a yes. Coming from Kurt, that's probably a yes. Yeah. Give me a call sometime, Kurt. We got to talk again soon. All right, everyone. Thanks for playing with us tonight. This was a ton of fun. Didn't get where we wanted to go, but we covered a lot of info. So yeah, that's a yes. Oh, thanks, Jenny. This
Thanks,
was
Jenny.
a lot of fun, you guys. So, all right, everyone, take care, and we'll see you next time. And it's going to be probably a couple of weeks before I get back to you. Next weekend we have a birthday celebration, so we'll be in touch. And signing off. Take care.